Sergio, it's amazing. Here we are in person. We've never met before.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
So listen, let's go back to how we first met. So talk to me through that, because it's kind of a fun story. Your whole evolution, I think it's just a great story in the space.
I've been following Real Vision for a while now. I always saw a lot of value in being able to be the fly on the wall of you having conversations with some of the smartest people out there in finance. And so I was very focused on the macro when I was working at Barclays. Spent the last 7 years of my career there.
And what were you doing there?
I was doing equity derivatives sales.
Right,
into Latin American,
do, right?
So ETFs, options, structured notes. And so, found it very, very valuable to get that information. And then I will write a morning note and, borrow a lot of the ideas or just kind of use that.
You stole our ideas.
I would not steal them, but use them as a source of inspiration.
Right.
So after a few years following you guys around and given COVID, the first years and the second years of Barclays didn't have a chance to really have that training, one-on-one with the people on the desk and all the programs that we had. And so I figured it'd be a good idea to kind of give them a perspective of what, the best advice, successful people have had in the market and just pass it on to them. So I said, well, I'm going to just DM Raoul and ask him, hey, give me one or two bullet points as to what the best advice you ever got for, being a salesperson. And so I DM'd you. I honestly did not expect a DM back. And you replied and you was like, yeah, sure. And then you said, hey, why don't I just, do an interview and I'll talk to him for an hour. And that was it was amazing. We put the event together. We hosted, I think it's 40, 50 of the analysts. And the feedback that we got was incredible. They were all over the moon. They just really, really, a lot of them, still to this day, a few of them are friends, told them I was coming to see you. They were just super happy about that.
Because I used to do that when I was at Goldman. I used to be brought in to see all those. So when you reached out to me, I thought, well, I know how to do this and I know how to get them really interested and give them a focus of what to do. And it's just fun to do, right? To help people.
No, I loved it. They loved it. It kind of opened my eyes to there's more outside of the walls of this bank or this market, right? You can really, especially using Twitter, using Discord, you can reach out to anybody in the world. And if you connect, then that can make a big difference.
And also, it really shows that investment banks are set up over owning a set of research and ideas that they distribute to their clients. And the reality is the world's changed. The quality of information on Twitter or Real Vision or all this stuff is ridiculous.
It is. And so my morning note, it started getting really ridiculous towards the end because I realized every single bank sends out the same morning note. Futures did this, Tens did that. And so I started digging deeper into the Reddit crowd and the hoodies. So I started writing about the hoodies in January of that year. Our research team didn't put out anything until 9 months later, even though I was like, guys, you gotta realize retail traders are moving everything. And so, same thing with Twitter, same thing with all the social media, being able to tap into the world's information in a second is super valuable.
So how did you get into crypto and all of this? Because you're a macro guy at an investment bank, living the dream that you thought that this is what you really wanted to do. You had a great job. Suddenly?
I missed it once. So on one of our junior traders, when I was at Goldman, I started my career at Goldman in FX. He left in 2011, and on his way out, he's like, hey, I'm going to do a startup for cryptocurrency. Okay. So we stayed in touch because he would ask where different EM currencies fixed over the week, over the month, and we stayed in touch. And then about a year later, he's like, hey, by the way, my app is done. You should download it and buy some Bitcoin. And I said, okay, Fred, I'm going to download Coinbase. And I did. So this is Fred Erson, yes, the co-founder of Coinbase. And I tried to connect my checking account, but the bank, which shall remain nameless, fraud alert, no, come into the branch, you're not going to send money there. And I just kind of okay, whatever. I missed it. I watched it double, triple, quadruple, tenduple. And at some point,
and watched Fred become a billionaire.
Yeah, and I'm happy for him, obviously. And he's done such amazing things. But so I missed the first time around, and then I saw it go all the way to 20,000. I've already made a lot of money. And then when it crashed, that's when it really caught my attention. After the crash, that it didn't go to zero. Yeah. And there was a lot of people still building on it. So to me, it was okay, now the froth is out. There's definitely some value there. So let me take a closer look. And then you started talking about it a lot. And so again, kind of this is really smart people talking about it. And so Metcalfe's Law just became a part of my vocabulary. And so March with the crisis, with the COVID crisis, Everything crashed, every asset crashed. I'm like, okay, this is a buying opportunity. So I called Fred. I said, Fred, what do I buy? He said, buy Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I just started buying, kind of averaging in. With work and everything that was going on, I was super focused on, rates and everything. I was not really paying attention. Keep an eye on the balance, was going up. Okay. And so it wasn't until later in the year that as part of my research and for my morning note, that was, again, super ridiculous, I saw NFTs. And in Jan, there was a big NFT buy. It was a punk. It was an ape punk by my now friend G Money, who we hosted on Real Vision this summer. And I wrote a note making fun of it and saying, the dollar is so worthless that people are wasting their money on JPEGs of pixelated animals. And I thought I was ripping apart the idea, and then a week later I wrote another note.
You thought you were so clever at this point.
Oh yeah, I'm like, I know so much better than this people. And one day I found myself in the punks Discord, and everybody was super friendly and helpful, and it just got red pilled. It was just kind of like day and night, and I saw the world with a whole different set of eyes.
And then I got a DM from you again at some point saying, I've left Barclays, I'm going full time into this space.
Yes. Right, so I bought my CryptoPunk on Valentine's Day.
Right.
And I'll never forget the date because my wife will not let me forget the date. Because she came over that evening, she's like, hey, well, you missed Valentine's and you've been in your computer nonstop for 48 hours. What's going on? And I was like, I just bought this. And she's like,
you missed Valentine's?
Yeah, well, like we're supposed to celebrate or something, I guess. And we've been there for a year, so really supposed to celebrate.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, listen, like I'm really into this. And then she's super supportive. And so, I bought the punk and then I stayed up, I don't know, maybe the next 2 weeks I slept like an hour or two a night.
What, just looking at your punk?
No, that too. But just doing research, getting to know like the community, the technology behind it, and kind of just diving really deep into it. That's when I realized I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was at work just thinking about crypto. I was repeatedly told at work to stop talking about NFTs, like repeatedly.
Really?
Yeah. We had this internal macro chat that kind of pretty much ran because I was always like sharing tweets and breaking news and ideas and stuff like that. And I like to brand myself, and that was my brand at Barclays, like the macro chat guy.
Yeah.
And then I became like the crypto guy and the ETH guy. And so, I got pulled aside a few times, and they were like, hey, people are wondering, like, when do you work? Because all you do is talk about crypto. And so I was like, maybe it's time for me to really actually commit fully into the space.
What did you see? What changed your mind? Because everyone's had to go through this transition. We're going to talk a bit about this in a bit, but what did you first see when you suddenly went to that Discord, saw the community? What changed your mind?
Tokenized tribalism. I'm a big believer in human nature and how human nature drives everything we do.
Yeah.
Right? Marketing is all about human nature. Finance, all about human nature. And so the way I saw
behavioral incentives.
Yeah. So social tokens, I saw that as a social token. This is a very exclusive club of people that have been around Ethereum since the beginning. And owning one of these things kind of gives you that membership. And so it opened so many doors. I was having conversations with, for example, a gentleman by the name of Snowfro, who is the founder of Artblocks, which is the biggest generative art platform on Ethereum. And having a punk kind of like gave you that access, and everybody's like, oh, you're family, and that's when I realized, okay, there's communities that are going to spring out of this and actually be able to like build value together. And of course, we're stuck indoors. It's been a year and a half of not being able to go anywhere. And I was like, okay, this is it. I sold all my stocks, I sold my gold, and I just dove.
All in.
Irresponsibly long, I believe, is the phrase I heard somewhere.
Yeah, might have heard that somewhere before. But one of the things that I'm struggling with is what's happened is this space was all about democratization, and now it's gone to elitism again. I mean, humans do this, right? So
Yes.
It's human nature, but that's what I find difficult.
It's bound to happen, right? And so especially with the way the assets have risen in value. But if you take a step back towards March and April, right? And
when you told me to buy.
I wrote you a very long email
I know.
with a punk thesis. That honestly, I see it now. I read it the other day, and I realized I should have just sold everything else and bought more punks after sending you that email. But if you go back to those days, and like, for example, digital art, and like you were talking about how there's digitized assets, right? Like how they have value because, we're spending our time in the digital world. And so seeing that digital art and being able to say, I own it, like that has some sort of effect in your brain where you start connecting with the pieces, with the artists, and again, going back to the community, right? So I started collecting a ton of art on Nifty Gateway, and being able to connect with the community was amazing. And the artists too, and the artists will reach out and be like, hey, like, help me think about my next drop. What do you think of this? And so being able to help them generate value through different mechanics or just kind of think about their careers was really, really rewarding. And so, elitism arises from, how expensive some things have gotten, but you start seeing also new communities springing up. And there's communities, there's projects that are actually focused on ramping people to the space. There's communities that are focused on charity. And so I think, you'll have different kinds of things, and the top will be the top. But I think the technology really unlocks a lot of ways in which, humanity can capture value.
And it's really interesting because, you say, well, you learned a lot from me, but in return, I learned a lot from you. From that email, I didn't buy it because I didn't understand it. Not that I didn't understand digital value, but I'm like, I can't relate to the images. They didn't mean anything to me. So I'm like, if it doesn't mean anything to me, I'm not really involved. And I'm not on Discord because I just don't have time. So I'm like, I just couldn't connect with it. And that was, I don't know what price they were then, 40,000 or something.
40K. I do believe in buying what you like, right? I missed the Bored Apes. I didn't like them. I didn't like the art. I personally did not like the way they were going about certain things. And so I chose to not buy them. And of course, I regret it tremendously because, they've really moved a lot. And along the way, I traded a few of them, bought, sold, but I never connected with the community.
Well, you actually did an interesting thing. You filmed, and we shouldn't really say this, but you filmed the Bored Ape Yacht Club, their party.
Yes.
And it shocked me because it was really bro-like, and I saw that tribe, and there's different tribes, as we know. And I thought, like you did, that's not really what I want to be part of.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, right? Like, I don't want to be part of that. I want to be part of this and be able to have that choice. And so, you miss some traits, and then you get lucky in others, and then others not so lucky. You have a bad read on the, whatever it be, the project, the community, the mechanics. But that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun.
And then the next phase in your and our journey together was Remy, who works for Global Macro Investment, was a co-founder of Real Vision. He reaches out to you, and you guys start talking about NFTs. And Remy, on the quiet for me, is building a metaverse for Real Vision. And we're like, and Remy taps me on the shoulder and goes, listen, we need to have an NFT gallery. So he reaches out to you, and most people haven't seen it, so it's just launching around this time.
Right.
That they're about to see this amazing NFT gallery that you put together for us, curated the whole thing. It's epic. Talk about that.
Right. So Remy and I were in the same Discord, again, for one of the artists, actually Matt Doc Jones.
That's
who
right.
I hosted on Real Vision 2 over the summer.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. And so, Remy goes by an anonymous Discord name. And I had no idea who he was. So he reached out on the side. He's like, hey, I really like Matt Doc Jones. Like, we started kind of chatting. And I could tell, the space is skews young. But there's also a lot of people with a ton of real world experience. And you see it in some of the biggest names like Punk 6529. Their people are very established and they're just taking on a new persona in this new world. So Remy revealed himself, doxed himself, as we say in crypto. And I was blown away. I'm like, wait, what? You're the guy who makes all the really cool charts for Real Vision Pro that I've been borrowing from for my morning notes. And we had a really good exchange. And he said, hey, listen, we're launching this initiative. As you know, Real Vision's really going into crypto. And we're going to have a gallery. Would you curate it for us? And I thought it was the biggest honor ever. And so we worked together to kind of pick different pieces that would reflect kind of the history, the short history of the space.
Yeah.
As well as where we see it going, right? So we had, I think, 3 or 4 pieces by Micah Johnson.
Yeah.
The Aku project. And
who's coming here.
Who will be here.
At the event.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also been a big support of this other charity project that I launched. So we have that as kind of the cultural value beyond just, number go up. And then we had...
Because those Aku pieces, they're gorgeous.
Yes, it's amazing. And the whole message behind it, right? And his whole idea of his nephew saying, hey, can Black kids be astronauts? And so very, very powerful. I'm a Mexican immigrant, learned English in high school.
Yeah.
So even while I was at Goldman and Barclays and all this stuff, the first thing people ask you is, where'd you go to school? and where you're from. And so society like tags you with different things.
Yeah.
And it's just human nature.
Yeah.
So NFTs, crypto, like enables us to kind of like transcend beyond that. And so that's what we wanted to do with the gallery. We did the Aku pieces, then we had some art blocks, autoglyphs, punks, and then some art by some of my personal favorite artists who have also done very well. So we have Too Much Lag, we have Nest Graphics, and we had Mad Dog Jones as well in there.
So those, if you were to buy that art gallery now, what's that worth?
Well, forgot we also have Xcopy in there, who's the #1 crypto artist out there. He just sold a piece for $7 million on secondary market. And what's that worth? Well, we have G Money's Punk, which is worth, after that print last night, it's probably worth $10-12 million just for the punk. We got Autoglyph, it's probably worth, I don't know, call it $500,000. Those 3 101s are probably $200,000 each. So you do the math, you're the numbers guy. Then we have an X copy that was sold at Sotheby's, and we borrowed from my friend Anonymous X, or Anonymous. That's what he goes by. That piece is probably in $2-3 million at this point. So $25 million in there.
Amazing, right? So let's split this down now. Because there's the art market and then the NFT space as it currently stands, and then we'll go into the future of where this is all going as well. So the art market, there's, one of my good friends, and I won't mention, but I mean, he's built a $100 million portfolio of just generative art.
Yep.
And there's a lot going on in the art space. Beeple kind of came roaring onto the scene. So what are you seeing in that space now? Where's that got to?
I think, listen, Beeple was was a local top. That $69 million Christus print was a local top. The expectations were very lofty. Obviously, kind of like killed them all expectations.
But to be fair, it was how many? It was
5,000 daily pieces. No, I mean,
they weren't expensive, actually.
No. If you break it down that way, no. So the art market went from like open editions and a lot of copies of the same thing, which people started seeing as trading cards. Right? Again, like kind of like people looking for profit, which goes back to human nature, right? And now we're moving more into 101s. And really, even though,
What do you mean by 101s?
There's only one token with...
Right, one of ones, right.
One of ones, yes. Yeah. Right, so there's only one token with that art piece.
Yeah.
The beauty is everybody can enjoy it, right? So that Xcopy piece in the Real Vision Gallery, anybody can go and see it. It's not locked away in an anonymous vault somewhere, like in a Swiss mountain.
That's right.
Right, everybody can go and appreciate it. And I think we'll continue to see kind of like a movement more towards kind of like, in a way, the traditional sense in which you have, instead of having unlimited copies of a piece in the token sense, you'll have kind of like collections and museums spring around this digital art, which is a whole different medium, and it really opens up a ton of possibilities. So the art market for digital art will continue to grow, obviously enabled by NFTs and enabled by the fact that the more copies that exist of something, right, the more pictures that are being taken of the Mona Lisa,
the more valuable it is.
The more valuable it becomes.
People don't get their heads around that, but it's absolutely true.
It takes a while. It really does take a while. And so, I think art will continue to go that way, continue to accrue value, continue to have smart people like your friend realize, hey, this is a paradigm change, and put money to work there too.
And what the bet he's taking was really interesting to me, because he's a traditional finance guy, but he's like generative art, which is generated by computers,
right,
or algorithms. Right, so here the art is in the programming.
Correct.
Which is a really different concept, even harder for people to get than Beeple, which is, much more traditional in the sense of artwork.
The outputs are beautiful. I'm sure you've seen them.
Yeah.
Right, so that's kind of like the technology enabling this whole new layer where, the artist codes the algorithm, and then when you mint the token, it takes a transaction hash and other variables, and then runs it through the algorithm and gives you a visual output. So it's really like capturing a moment in time of that blockchain and putting out something beautiful. You can't replicate it.
No, and I love the idea. Why do we need humans? Because we can now do this with music as well. We're seeing the rise of the algorithm becoming all-powerful, that in the end, the computers generate the arts, the computers generate the music,
but the humans generate the algorithm. And so technology, by reducing friction, for now, yeah.
For now.
Sure, sure. But it's a different way of expressing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And it's taken off tremendously, right? So art blocks and other platforms have launched after their success. I think it all comes down to the fact that the outputs are beautiful at the end of the day, and the meaning and the idea, the story behind each and every single one of them. Again, to my point about the art market moving more towards one-on-ones, for this, right, for an art blocks mint, you might have 1,000 pieces. And while they're all similar, they're all unique at the same time. And so, yeah, we value that. We value that scarcity. We value that, being able to say, I have the only copy of this.
And also, I don't think people have got their heads around yet where AR is going. And the fact that we could be displaying the piece of art here and you can permission certain people to see it by just moving your Apple iPhone around. And all of this stuff is coming. So we will move to 3D sculpture.
Yep.
All of this is all coming, and the possibility of the impossible is now upon us.
Which is just wonderful, right? Like if you think about how fast things have come when it comes to that. And at the end of the day, we're talking about art, right? We're humans. By nature, we love beauty. Obviously, we all have different definitions of it. But being able to sit in your house and listen, I live in New York, right? So I have some of the best museums within a 20-minute walk of myself. But I have a friend in Ohio, in Cleveland, right? If he were to go and look at, he wanted to go look at the top art, he will have to travel. There's a lot of friction.
Yeah.
Whereas now he can put, his headset and walk through the galleries of some of the best digital artwork and experience it right there. And so, yeah, it just really unlocks a lot of value. And then you draw into my background about, being from Mexico. A lot of people will never, ever be able to travel to New York or to Paris or anything like that. So being able to educate children with, this new technology and being like, hey, you're having the same experience as some of the kids that are a little bit more privileged and live in Boston and are able to, attend this kind of museum walkthrough or whatever. I think it's just really, really good for everybody.
Another big unlock that I had about talking about the impossible being possible is Jamie Burke. I don't know if you know Jamie.
Yes.
So Jamie, one Sunday morning, he sent me a Twitter message saying, hey, listen, I've got you an invite to the Dolce & Gabbana pre-launch in Venice, but it was via Zoom.
Yeah.
And he's there at the event. Do you want to come along? I'm like, sure. I think it was writing GMI that weekend. So I took an hour and went, and they talked about what they were doing. And this was driven by Dolce & Gabbana themselves. Mm-hmm. And they had created what was pretty traditional, which was, here's an item of clothing, and we're going to create a 4K image of it as well. So with the token, you get the piece of clothing, you can sell it, do whatever you want, you can wear it. But you've also got the digital rights to wear in the metaverse. And we understand the metaverse isn't there yet. So whenever you decide where and how, we will unlock it for you and allow. So there was this men's clothing, woman's dress, and some jewelry. Okay, fine. And then what they did, they said, and then we went to our designers and said, right, now create something that can only exist in the digital world with fabrics that cannot possibly exist in the physical world, and design that as an NFT. And there was this jacket, this men's jacket, and I don't really like D&G stuff, but it was gorgeous. And I thought, you know what? I would buy that in a digital world as a representation of myself.
Right.
And to me, it actually might be worth more than the $5,000 Tom Ford jacket that I was going to buy last week. And it stopped me in my tracks to realize that everything is now possible.
It is. And if you think about, for example, Instagram, right? And filters.
Yeah.
Right. We're already living in kind of the very, very primitive metaverse in that we love to project images of ourselves in social media.
Yeah.
Right. And then kind of edit them and try to make them look better. And that's what that's going to tap into, being able to walk around these worlds, again, worlds that are accessible to anybody with a computer, with a VR headset, and you want to say, hey, listen, this is my really nice, colorful D&G jacket. And it's the same thing we've done through history.
Yeah, because humans want to be their idealized vision of themselves.
Right.
Right, so they have this idea of where they want to be and what they want to look like and how they want to, or who their friends are, all of this stuff. And what's weird is you can make it happen digitally in a way that you might not have been able to do in the real world.
And it's just an extension of what we've done since we were living in caves, right? Like if you look at the history of art, the number one object is the human body, right? And like the clothes that we wore through the centuries. And so it's just an extension of that with this whole new medium that's available to us today. And I'm sure, 20 years down the road, it'll be God knows what. But it'll still be that expression of human nature where we love ourselves and we want to look better for ourselves, but also to impress others.
Yeah. And usually, because it's humans, it's all to do about mating or where you stand in the hierarchy.
Yes, that's
humans. I mean, they're ridiculous. We are just apes with guns, is my general view on this.
And NFTs,
which is why I've got that picture of the ape with a gun, because it's like, that really is what humans are. Yep. And they have the same hierarchical structures. They do the same thing. They try and make themselves attractive to each other. And all animals are the same. So let's talk about the other human attribute, which is the tribalism part.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell do you filter what is real in this space? Who you want to belong to? Because I find it hard, and I'm a big observer of the space, not a participant really, of the NFT, these communities that are springing up, because I can't figure out what the community stands for. I had a really interesting conversation with Bill Tye, who's approaching it with a really clear sense of mission. Right, this is what we're doing, and I kind of like that because it's a DAO structure, it'll go however it goes, but there's a sense of purpose. I don't know what the sense of purpose of Bored Ape Yacht Club, or even the Punks, and all of these thousands of other things coming. Some are building media companies from the ground up, like Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
And I guess Mike Johnson is really essentially, but then there's a bunch of other ones and they're kind of assuming everyone's going to figure out what they do. Or is it just a membership club? How you think, or is it all of these things and none of these things?
This is where the famous DYOR in every Twitter post comes about, right? Like it really does require people to take the time to dive in and to kind of like research and get a feel for it.
But what do you look for? I don't even know what to look for. I trust certain people that I know, right? So if you come to me and say, hey, listen, something to look at, I will go and look at it. Or if, if Bill Tye tells me, or whoever it is, somebody, my trusted kind of network of people. But the average person, what are they even looking for?
I think the vibe. At the end of the day, it's the vibe. Like, do you vibe with like the communication that's going on in the project? Like the art, like what they're trying to achieve. There's all kinds of, like you said, different communities springing with like different end goals, right? Media companies or just wanting to belong to something bigger than them. It's like sports teams, right? You pretty much your sports team is dictated by your geography.
But at least you're playing in a...
No, but I mean, when you're a fan, right? You're a Raiders fan because you grew up in Oakland. Now they moved to Vegas. Are you still a Raiders fan? Right? So what's their point? Like winning a championship every year. That's it, but people are like rabid fans of that. Whereas with these communities now, like you can pretty much have a more active role in where the community is going to go, and this is success. But you have to resonate with it, so you have to spend some time in it. And I also think that's what is enabling DAOs to grow so much, because you're able to kind of like diversify your bets and hedge your bets, because now you're investing with a group of people, and so instead of having a bigger allocation in your portfolio, you can have small allocations throughout a bunch of different projects with a bunch of smart people.
One of the things that I'm looking at, and I've seen this before, is new technology unlock, huge excitement, millions of copycat projects. The average person has no idea what's what, and there'll be a massive washout.
Yeah.
Where 99% of this is worthless. But the idea is priceless.
Yes.
And where this goes is what really interests me. Because I'm just spammed all day and all night with NFTs projects, of which I'm like, I have no idea. So I just stay away from everything.
Yeah.
But I'm an observer because I think that you were early, so you were in a position of, you're on the front foot, right? You've got, forget the investing side, you're on the front foot because you understand how these are developing, who are the interesting communities, what's going on. For most people, they don't. And there's a lot of people who are going to get burnt in this whole process.
It's ICOs all over again.
It's ICOs all over again.
But to my point earlier, right? Like, and what you just said, where's this going? What happens after it all crashes and burns? And what's left behind? And that's really what's going to be valuable, which was the cycle was Ethereum, for example, right? And so how many like ICOs we had back in 17 that, billions and billions of dollars and they went nowhere, but the ones that stuck around were there were builders on them. Now they're at the forefront. And so, yeah, it'll be impossible to really, determine today. I mean, yeah, I'm sure a few people are extreme visionaries and will nail it. But on average, I agree with you, and I agree with the assessment that the majority of NFT projects, at least their monetary value, will come down from frothy valuations that we have right now. Another factor that plays into effect is that Ethereum, it's $4,000 today, but people think of 1 ETH is 1 ETH, and so when you're spending money on blockchain, right, 0.15 ETH is $600, but people will spend it in a heartbeat without thinking twice about it. Happens to me. I was shopping the other day for clothes for a conference, and I needed some shoes. And they were $200. And I'm like, $200 for shoes? No. And my wife's like, ETH was 2,000 at the time. She goes, Sergio, it's 0.1 ETH. And I'm like, oh, okay, then we'll take them. But it happens, right? And so you're playing with like house money, like this magical internet money. And so people lose a little bit of sight of the actual real world valuations. And so, yeah, those are gonna come in. But again, what's left behind, what's being built, and what it's being built out there, this whole concept of Web3, where it's the user and builder owned internet, and where that takes us, that's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, and I think people need to disconnect speculative investing, trading, from community. Right now, they're all lumped in the same thing because a bunch of these projects did really well and made a bunch of people rich. But really, it's not about that. Particularly this NFT stuff of, a group of 1,000 or whatever the number is. It's about building a community. Is there a real community behind it? Do I want to be part of it? And then you don't think of it in terms of the value of the JPEG itself. You think of it as the value of the community to you.
Right.
And those can be $5. And Punk 6529 talks about this. It is not about trying to find the thing that goes to $1 million.
Yeah, so I have some projects where they really haven't moved, right? But the team behind it's great. I love the vibe. I love what they're building. And so not too concerned. And then other stuff that just moves and you're like, oh, I got lucky in that one. You just sell it because you take the money. And so, I mean, it's so early and it's so cliche because we all say it, oh, so early, we're all going to make it. But it is so early. And I like spreading out my bets, both community-wise, right? Because people can just quit. I mean, we just had a major CryptoPunk holder like rage quit the project this week, right? He dumped 20 punks for maybe 30% below their fair value.
And this was because you don't own the rights to the image.
He disagreed with the fact that Larva Labs, which is the creator of the punks, which by the way, were free to claim in 2017 and don't have any royalties on secondary trading. So free product that has obviously, gained a lot of value. There's this movement where people want Larva Labs to make it CCO, right? Which is like there's no IP rights owned by anybody. Again, with the belief that the more copies that exist of something, the more derivatives, it increases the value.
Yeah.
And so, that person decided, I'm not getting what I want, and so I'm going to exit the project. And again, you have your choice to act.
That's right. That's what this community is about. You sell your tokens and move on to another community.
Yeah. And so that's it's been an interesting week in NFT space because of this whole debate. And the beauty of it, and going back to your earlier about social media, like we're able to have these conversations in the open and these dialogues and being able to be that fly on the wall where, Punk 6529 is talking to, Punk, 4156 and VVD and all these people that are really, really smart. And you can tell they're smart because, we're all playing video games at the end of the day. The difference is the high score list is not in points, but in dollars, right? Or ETH. And so you can tell who's done very well and they'll accrue that social capital. And so being able to see those conversations play out is extremely valuable. And I think that's why being part of the community and being involved, again, not like I was my first few weeks where I was not sleeping. but just kind of like remaining there and engaged. And I like to stay within my lanes because, I don't have the bandwidth with job and then this to like spend all that time. So just pick a lane, get to know the people. For me, it's all about not just the community. What makes up the community? The people. So you get to know, half my friends, I don't know their real names. I've never seen them, their faces, right? And so does that matter? I don't think so. They've proven to me that, they're trustworthy and that we like the same things. And I have a collective. We go by the Mad Pups. It's 8 of us. We have this 101 by Mad Dog Jones. And for the longest time, we, never knew who each other was. And we just had a meetup in New York, a few of us in November, and they're like, oh my God, like you're this guy, like you're Sven, you're Darren. It's not their real names, but to me they are. And
what were they like to meet in person?
It was amazing.
Yeah?
It was incredible. It was like, okay.
Were you all kind of the same age? Had you kind of all coalesced similar people?
Which is weird. We are all
Right.
same age. The majority of us, like corporate life, kind of been there for 10, 15 years, done well. And so, yeah.
That's weird,
it's
right?
Really
so you
weird.
even anonymously attracted the same kind of people.
Yes, which is very powerful too. And like I met a lot of like the thought leaders, like 65, 29, and them in real life as well. And realizing they're actually a little older than you would imagine.
Yeah.
And their backgrounds being like, again, like successful.
Much more traditional and successful.
Yeah. And so for them being able to like become a kid again and like develop this whole new personality, but add value to the community.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
Let's talk about the other side of of these NFTs, which is investing, which you focused on as well. So there's the community aspect. And as we said, it doesn't really matter if they're valuable, not valuable. It's do you value the community? Are you enjoying being part of it? Does it matter to you? But the other side is you can actually invest in this stuff too. So how do people approach the investing in the space? Do you just blue chip investing and then a bit of speculative stuff on the side? How do you think about it? How do you build a portfolio? And how should people approach it?
My approach has been mostly via collectives and DAOs. So we just launched this new metaverse-focused DAO called Neon DAO.
Right.
Incubated by the Lao, which is one of the largest kind of like DAO of DAOs out there. We have folks from Flamingo DAO, which is the largest NFT collecting DAO, and then Artifact, which are one of those lifestyle brands in the metaverse. They create like sneakers and clothes for both real life and the metaverse. And so we teamed up to kind of like a hive mind approach towards investing because it is hard. Like which metaverse avatars are gonna be big in 10 years? We don't know. So I think you have to have like a very long time preference, right? Like being able to say, okay, I'm gonna hold these things through the cycles, which are brutal and compact for a while. And so for me, again, it's just kind of like diversifying my bets by partnering up with really good, smart people that I can trust, and then taking that approach.
So you're investing mainly via these DAO structures with some of your own bets because you bought.
Yeah, the side bets are fun and whatever. Like buy stuff for myself or like whenever I have kids or for my nieces. Like giving my mom an NFT and she immediately within a day made T-shirts out of it.
Really?
Yeah, for
Love
her
it.
and my niece, and she sent me a
Love it.
picture. Yeah, cryptotes. She just loved it. And so, but I do think, it's hard to be, if you're not 100%, you're gonna miss stuff. So for somebody that doesn't have the time, or like I really enjoy my job, right? So
what job are you doing now?
I do sales for Fireblocks. I'm taking care of the Latin American region. And so we're a digital asset custody solution.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know Fireblocks unless you're really in the industry.
Right.
And then everybody knows them because it's like the gold standard.
Yes, so we've been very, very lucky to have, really good clients that have helped us continue to improve. And so our technology helps them secure their digital assets without having to rely on a third-party custodian. So we're the technology solution behind institutional self-custody and have a front row seat at all the capital flowing into the space, which has just been amazing, right? And just seeing banks and funds and everything being like, all right, we need to do crypto and we need to do it yesterday, so let's go.
Which is why I'm very interested in the first quarter.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Because I'm hearing the same everywhere.
It's coming.
Because everyone's had the mandate. You know how these institutions are. They make the decision and then they need the asset allocation group say, okay, well, we will give you X amount of capital for next year.
Right.
So Jan 1, they're all like, oh shit, I need to put all this money to work.
I think they're all going to race each other through Q1.
Yeah, it's
but
exactly
yeah, so
my
it's
view.
all, so we're trying to get ahead, right? Like with our Neon DAO, or buying assets. And so, for example, for me, that I really enjoy my job, I don't have a lot of like free time, right? And when I do, I want to have quality time instead of having to go and like research all these new things. Well, I go on our Neon DAO Discord, and guys that are and girls that have done the research, are more a little bit in the weeds, will post summaries, and then we vote. We actually have this thing called emoji consensus, where there's thumbs up emoji and thumbs down emoji, and if like after doing the reading you want to deploy capital for the DAO to deploy capital, you vote for it. And so there's different levels, smaller amounts of allocation, emoji consensus. Anything larger, we do take like a on-chain vote. But the emoji consensus is like really efficient, it's effective.
Yeah, super easy.
And so I just participate in the weekly calls and contribute when I can, and when I don't, I know that my interests are being taken care of in a way. And so it's been really rewarding because you learn so much, and then you try to give back too, right? When I contribute, it's mostly things that I think my fellow DAO members are gonna find value in. So it's kind of like super accretive, and it's just really rewarding as well.
So, because I was trying to solve this for the whole crypto space as well, because it's so complex, and you end up becoming focused on one thing. I'm becoming very focused on social tokens, which I think is it's an extension of what we're talking about, but still different. You're focusing on some of this stuff. Other people are focusing on DeFi. And so I thought, how the hell do I solve this complexity? And I thought, well, there's almost no money that went into the secondary markets, the hedge funds. It all went into VCs.
Yeah.
So I set up this fund of funds, because then you can rent the best expertise from the best people in the space. And I think that's going to flow as the space develops, and we've seen a ridiculous amount of interest in this. It'll start flowing into DAOs, because that's the new hedge fund.
Right. The deal flow's incredible.
Yeah, and we were talking before about NFTs and how they're going to blow up at some point. That is the point to deploy capital by a bunch of smart people who are in the space and understand, okay, what's ashes and a waste, and what is the phoenix that's going to rise out of the ashes? I mean, I love this. I mean, the whole asset management industry is changing in front of our eyes as well.
It is. It's such a community approach. It's such again, being able to take value from people. And they don't have to be in New York, right? You don't have to be in a boardroom in New York discussing ideas. Half of our members, I couldn't tell you where in the world they are. And I know we have people in Puerto Rico. I know we have people like in Russia. We have people everywhere, Brazil, obviously through the US. And so it's great that we can all come down together and make these decisions, allocate capital efficiently, and then kind of like go out there and continue trying to bring in good ideas and good opportunities for everybody, instead of each of us spending 200 hours of research.
It's impossible. It's impossible. Space is moving too fast. It's exponential in every area.
Right.
There's too many tokens. So much. I mean, the other thing I've loved watching on this same topic is you've been watching the Real Vision bot.
Yes.
Right, and they're here, Moritz and Moritz, right? And the crowd has outperformed the experts. And this is just asking the crowd to make a simple asset allocation each week.
Yeah.
And they don't allocate a portfolio like you and I would. So they're not following asset allocation principles. They're not kind of gradually easing out of one thing out of another. Sometimes, bang, AVAX is in, and the next week it's out. But the portfolio works.
Yeah.
Because these people have been educated by watching Real Vision, being on Twitter, being in the communities, and then they're expressing all of their knowledge by a simple voting mechanism, and the hive mind crowd is smarter.
It is. And we had kind of like the first, like the crowdsourcing 1.0, right? Like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that kind of died down. There was no real way of doing it at a broader scale and kind of like keep people accountable. So blockchain fixes that, where you're able to have all the votes on chain if you want to, and it's immutable. So you can always go back and see kind of like where everybody was coming from. And so to your point about portfolio construction, like I look at my education, and I'm really grateful to my school, right? But it was all kind of like value investing. And how has value investing done over the last 25 years? Right? I saw a chart, actually. I logged into my old macro Twitter for the first time in a long time this morning, just kind of like see where things were. And I saw this chart that showed the S&P.
You've got two separate Twitter experiences.
I do.
Really?
Yeah, well, macro Twitter is very depressing.
It is.
It's very negative.
I was talking about this yesterday when
They're
I
always
opened the
fighting each other, and like this guy versus this guy, and I'm smarter than you. And it's like where NFT Twitter is like, yeah, we're all gonna make it. And so, I'd rather have that in my life than this.
But they would say you're just being a ridiculous optimist, and it's all
great. Good. Okay, more for me.
I reached that conclusion too.
In the long run, I think we'll be better off. And so again, and it's not just having like hubris of like, oh, well, I'm an optimist, it's going to work out. No, I'm an optimist with a bunch of other optimists really focused on making it together.
In a space that's going exponentially.
So I'd rather have that. But as I was saying, so I saw this chart, right, where the S&P 500, if you take out the top 5 stocks, which we all know which they are, like the FANGs, it's down 20% of the year or something like that. It's ridiculous. But your traditional finance education tells you to go buy the stock and your price to book ratio of like whatever, like doesn't work. We're long past that. So some of these NFTs, you really like can't even apply those whole things. We're like, oh, well, like, no, you can't think sometimes, honestly. Like for me, like buying a JPEG for $10,000 on February 14th, that's ludicrous. Like, old macro me, who a month before had written an email making fun of
cynical, miserable macro year, right?
Yeah. Then saying, oh, wait, look at this guy. He's got little blue clown eyes. And this is who I'm going to be in the metaverse. And so from that, and then, people started paying attention to me because I'm a punk. And people wanted to hear my ideas. And somehow I have 23,000 Twitter followers. And I feel such a responsibility. I can't imagine how you feel with multiples of that. Right? And now I feel like I want to help people. I want to help this whole community. And so it's been just super rewarding.
It's amazing because once you see this space, truly see it for what it is, you can't unsee it. And you can see the magic of Metcalfe's law because everybody wants to help bring people into it.
Yeah.
And it's not because we want our JPEGs to go up or our
I
crypto
want my
to go up.
JPEGs to go up.
Yeah, okay, we do, but we also...
No, I hear you.
You don't want people to be left behind.
Yeah.
Because to the same extent where warning people ahead of 2008 and 2012 in Europe, and to some extent the pandemic, was an important thing, you're saying, yeah, but it's not all about warning people about risks. It's about showing them opportunities, shouting as loud as you can, saying, listen, guys, you can stop worrying about inflation and being miserable about the bond market and whatever, and hating Elon Musk, or you can just come over to this world, and here's opportunity.
The Tesla thing, the Tesla Q movement on Twitter, were like,
that was so awful.
It's a cult. And you know what? They left so much money on the table. Some of them lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so, I think, by nature, humans, new technology, new information, we tend to shield ourselves.
Humans here fear change.
Yes. And then people in position of power or people who have, a little bit more privilege, kind of I don't know if subconsciously think that change might take that away from them. And so
that's right.
I did notice a lot back in the trading floor, a lot of people saying, hey, watch out.
But what I love is that tipping point when people fear change, pioneers embracing change. Then the tipping point comes when everyone panics and realizes, oh shit, I have to change. That becomes the incredibly rewarding part. We've not got there yet. That's the we're so early bit. Not only in the technology and its applications, but that tipping point.
Yeah.
Because you can see, and it made me feel a bit sick, probably you too, the Meta thread that was out last night with Pepsi and with Budweiser.
Oh, yeah. GM friends and all this stuff. Cringy.
Who the fuck are you kidding? You have no community. You are just trying to pretend you're involved in this space because it's cool. It was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so for me, actually, right, my Instagram, which is the one private social media thing that I have. And I started posting about NFTs. And again, my friends were like, what's wrong with you? March and April. And then just last month, I bought Bored Ape Mutant. And I don't know why I posted it on my Instagram story and I said, hey, who wants a piece of this? More than happy to kind of run a little DAO. And I had 30 people within 2 hours. Just hey, I want in. And so now we have this little Telegram chat, people who had never owned an NFT.
So then it got fractionalized.
Yeah, we didn't do the whole tokenization or anything. It's just kind of and I know them all. And
right, yeah.
Good old database on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But seeing that change of yo, what are you doing? To hey, I'm in. And by the way, what are we buying next? In 4 or 5 months, it's just been crazy. It just went, again, happened to me, right? From what is this to yes, all of it.
So do you even care about the layer ones anymore? Or this is now, Sergio, you are in this space?
I do care for the L1s professionally at work, right?
Yes,
and
but
then,
are you investing in that space? Are you excited about it? Or is it just
I'm
You've
excited
taken
about
it for granted now. It's there, and it's
no thinking of like how I used blockchain from the beginning, which was to send money back to my parents and my sister back in Mexico. So I do see the potential of that, and obviously I love Ethereum, and I think it's going to be the dominant chain, but it will be a multi-chain future.
Yeah.
So definitely keeping an eye out for chains that solve for that gas usage, but also maintain security and sovereignty that people in countries like my home country will need to be able to make sure that their savings on chain are safe, and that they have those secure channels of transmission of value. So definitely still poking around, but again, it's so hard to keep up with everything that's going on, and the JPEGs are just nicer to look at.
And we all got, or I certainly got really fed up with the maxis, and I thought you are one of the clear reasons that Bitcoin has underperformed in this cycle so much.
So toxic.
Is the community so toxic, and then suddenly the NFT space. Ethereum was always a pretty neutral, welcoming community because everyone's building applications on it. And then the NFT crowd come with their good mornings and all of this. I mean, the maxis hate me for saying it, but it's like, it's a happy place.
It's a happy place. That's it, right? And that's what's been like onboarding so many people.
Yeah.
That you say GM on Twitter, I can never say it. Like people are in the morning like GM, and I'm like, no, it's good morning. It's buenos dias. But on Twitter,
Buenos dias, yeah.
But on Twitter, GM is great.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get 40, 50 likes and people go and GM back to you. And like that just activates something in your brain when you start the day with like,
I'm engaged in the
happiness.
community and the community's, pleased to see me, and it's nice.
I'm sure there's some chemical reaction when you get all those likes.
Of
You're
course.
just addicted to it. And so, but it is kind of like the WAGMI culture, and it feels amazing. And obviously, right, Ethereum went from 700 to 4,000. That was a huge factor into this whole thing. But now that it's here, now that it's unlocked, not just the value, but the creativity and like launch all these projects, I think the future's super, super bright.
And what about the argument that goes, this only took off because Ethereum went up so much and everyone had so much money, so everything looks like nothing priced in ETH.
I agree with that.
So there's an element of excess spending because of what
sure.
happened.
For sure. I mean, NFTs were around since 2016, 2017, right? We talked about CryptoKitties yesterday. Punks, again, were free. I mean, you could buy a punk for an ETH in August of last year, right? Today, the cheapest punk is 70 ETH, and the summer was 140 ETH. And so, that kind of like that wealth effect, and then playing with house money, thinking, okay, well, I bought all these things that, for $300, now they're worth $1 million. So I feel like I have discretionary income to go and spend more. And then I spend it on things that continue to go up in value.
And also because they're priced in ETH and ETH goes up, they become a call option on ETH.
For sure. Until they don't.
Until they don't.
People in the space misunderstand convexity day in, day out.
Yeah.
Those that don't are the best NFT traders out there. They understand, the people that understand convexity, and it's funny because a lot of them are ex-equity option traders. G-Money, Keyboard Monkey, Anonymous. All those guys used to trade professionally equity options. They get convexity, and they're the best NFT traders out there. But the majority of the space, they don't have that experience, right? That experience of trading an asset.
I've always thought option pricing model is probably the right way to price almost all crypto.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because there's something within that is what it looks like. They all look like call options.
Yeah, they act like that too, yeah.
They act like that, that's right.
Yeah.
And you just need to figure out how far out of the money they are and what does that mean and stuff. But there is an element of being able to find a fair value. And again, you could use the Metcalfe's law as the other way of valuing it. There's something around that, and I get it. Because the other thing we haven't gone through, and we will go through at some point, is the floor price of these things are going to collapse while Ethereum's collapsing. And so suddenly Ethereum may fall 50%. These things fall 50%. You've lost 90% of your money.
You've already seen it twice this year, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so when ETH topped in May, right, Punks topped right around the same time, around the Christie's auction. And so, it was a brutal bear market. I learned a lot from it in that, I sold some stuff that I wish I hadn't, but I got scared. Like eventually human nature takes over you and you're like, oh my God, I have 100 of these JPEGs. I cannot pay rent with them. I can send them to my mom in Mexico. She cannot pay her bills with them.
No.
And so we had that bear market into the summer that then just rocket ship outside of it. That's when I sent you the email about the punks. And then right now with some space, like art blocks, really, they're down 90% from the top, some of them. High-end stuff like what your friend bought, all those ringers and fidenzas, no, those will be fine. But floor pieces, a lot of them have really, really come down. Because
So here's another question I don't understand is what, with the punks or the Bored Apes, what makes the difference in pricing between one and the other? I get it, there might be somebody famous has owned it or, there's some relevance to that piece. But in general...
So you mean punks versus apes or within the punks?
Within the punks.
Scarcity, the rarity of the traits, right? So they all have, for example, my punk is a dark-skinned punk, which sadly dark-skinned punks tend to be on the floor. And that just reflects the fact that there's more light-skinned people in the game. It has blue clown eyes. People don't really like clown eyes. They prefer the 3D glasses that are cooler looking, but also there's less punks with 3D glasses. So that scarcity gives them value. Hoodies, for example, there's more hoodies than a bunch of other attributes that trade lower than the hoodies, but because people like the way the hoodies look, and because people like 6529 and Santiago Raoul, they use the hoodie punks, and so they look like Jedi masters, so people value that. So it's a combination of rarity of the traits and then kind of like what people see in those traits, right? So 3D glasses, Richard from Manifold has pretty much kind of like branded himself about 3D glasses. So like smart, like blockchain savvy people value the 3D glasses. Hoodies, like I said, kind of like the Jedi Master. And then you have different types. In the punks, you have aliens, which is only 9 of them. Then you have apes. Then you have zombies. So there's less of each, and there's humans. So people want to have the rarer one. And in the Bored Apes, they're all apes, but for example, the more scars are gold fur, and there's only a handful of them. So people value having an ape with gold fur more than just having an ape with regular fur. And they have like trippy fur. And so scarcity.
And I wonder if those attributes will change over time as well, where suddenly dark-skinned punks become incredibly valuable because they're scarcer and there is a cultural movement to own dark-skinned punks.
We've kind of already seen it as well, where certain attributes were not as in vogue or they were in the past. And so they go through their own little cycles. Like the market cycles in these things are just...
And look, there are going to be people watching this saying, what the fuck are you two talking about? Really? Do you actually care if there's a JPEG image with 3D glasses? You're still part of the same community. So why does that matter? Let's say, because we talked about community being valuable, and now we're talking about the scarcity of the artwork being valuable. It's hard for people to get their heads around. If I've got a membership of the community, why not just buy the cheapest one?
Right.
Or the community not take you seriously?
No, they will take you seriously. I was taken seriously when I bought, my punk was the cheapest punk available at the time. But also what you do with it, right? How you brand yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, some of those traits immediately give you a little bit more clout. And it comes in two ways, right? You either were early enough that it didn't cost a lot, but you had the vision to not sell it when it 4x before it 50x. So there's perceived value in you having vision in not selling back then. Or you came in late and you spent $400,000 in it. So people assign kind of like value subconsciously to both scenarios. And there's also groups within groups, right? There's like, I know in the apes, they have like the cheetah fur, and they're always picking fights with, I think it's the trippy fur or something, and they have like this rapper and their other rapper, and so there's like little like tribes within it. And so, listen, NFTs take you back to like being 14, 15 years old and playing with Pokemon cards.
And so what do you think about, so Apes is doing interesting stuff because they're commercializing.
Yes.
Where is this all going? Because we're seeing the music, and we've got, tonight we've got Timbaland, and they're doing stuff based around apes and music. We're seeing apes and cartoons, all sorts of stuff happening.
I think it's just, again, speaks to the power of Web3, this whole creator economy, where now, you can launch your own brand based on this JPEG that's part of a community that's, well regarded or that's hip. Right? People think of Bored Apes as kind of like the supreme of NFTs.
Yeah.
And so, it gets kind of like giving power to the collector to do whatever they want with that ape, and use it as a springboard to launch something else. And so I think a lot of the projects, they've adopted that model, because it's worked so well for them. And also we see the broader adoption by brands who are like Adidas, right? They're doing this collaboration with apes. They bought an ape, and now whether they're like, 10,000 ape owners will probably, go buy Adidas something now because, hey, Adidas is part of our community. And brands sometimes do it very, very organically. I think Adidas did it really well. Or just, like you were talking about
Pepsi and
but like White Castle, like the burger shop, right? They bought an art blocks. It's called Sea Hams. And that's a very tight community. They call it the Hamily. And so they kind of are doing it very organically as well. So there's a ton of different avenues. But to your question, IP, is it important? I think it's important to have the rules be clear from the beginning. So if you buy an NFT that gives you IP rights and you have the choice, opportunity to go monetize it, then yeah, you're leaving money on the table by not doing so. But also, if other people within that project go and monetize theirs in a way that adds value to yours, you can also just be kind of like a passenger in their success. You'll accrue a little bit of value. So all goes back to, kind of like your partners in that project, like who's doing what with our project, and picking projects where you see people doing stuff that resonates with you.
And then the other side of NFTs is, we're seeing music, we're seeing interesting other creative projects coming out of NFTs that have value as well. We're seeing brands and all sorts of people getting involved in terrible ways and interesting ways. McDonald's and their NFTs, they're never going to accrue value. Maybe they will in 50 years' time. People will laugh about how bad it was and so therefore it's valuable. But we're seeing just a movement of everything being tokenized, and NFTs seems to be the gateway drug now.
The Trojan horse for crypto adoption, for sure. I think, and I think you and Bill were kind of alluded to it yesterday, being able to just capture value, right? All the value that's going around, and being able to put it on an immutable ledger where now you can point to it and say, hey, this value that's been captured is mine. Do you want to buy it? Or I can give it to you as for your work, for your labor. Here's tokenized value. You receive an exchange it for, your contribution, whatever that might be. And so, there's just broader, it's kind of like a broader thing into where a lot of things that we're not being able to kind of monetize, like how many things, we've been able to monetize since blockchain got created, and it just continue to go down.
Yeah, we're just digitizing all value.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting with the NFT thing is digital identity. It's becoming identity, and you've already talked about it. You've got 2 Twitter identities.
I'm not active on my macro Twitter, it's more for rating, but yeah.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you could have 2 different images
that
represent 2 different sides of your personality, and you may have a sports Twitter, and you can be authenticated by the community in who you are. You can carry your authentication points, but nobody knows who you are. There's some fascinating world that's being developed.
I think there's a lot of power in anonymity and just being able to build your own brand.
Yeah.
Our society tags us with certain things from, where we're coming from, where we grew up, XYZ.
That's right.
And being able to say, hey, listen, this is who I really am, and I'm sitting behind some sort of profile. And you don't have those biases from the beginning.
No, you're Mexican, or I'm half Indian, or the accent you speak with, or anything.
The social events on Wall Street, the first thing people ask you is, where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
First thing, where'd you go to school? I caught myself doing that at a few NFT parties because I was trained after 12 years. Hey, where'd you go to school? And we're like, I didn't go to school. And you're like, oh, but you're worth $2 billion. Right? And so for me, it's been really helpful to...
But that was just, don't forget, that's like an NFT. It was your credibility statement, was your certificate that you went to Wharton, right? I didn't. I went to a shitty university as the only one that accepted me, and I still got into Goldman in the end. But it's just the same thing.
It is.
It's a credibility statement by a community, which is, we're an investment bank and we value people who have this NFT.
Right.
Which is the certificate of your degree or your master's.
The Wharton diploma.
Yeah. And then, meanwhile, we're just switching to a different set of authentication.
Yeah, and you were part of that community, and we know that lacrosse players, we like that community, so we'll bring you into ours.
It's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing.
And they used to all wear, when I was at Goldman, everyone wore fucking chinos, or khakis, as Americans call them. And then it went to the sleeveless,
the vest,
the vests.
the Pataguchis.
It's ridiculous, right? Because they all self-identify. And it's the same thing.
It's tribalism.
It is tribalism. It is tribalism.
It's pure human nature, and we're tokenizing it now. And again, to identity, like I personally think it brings out a purer version of yourself, right? And you see it. There's people that, honestly, I've met people who I adore on social media and Twitter, and I met them in real life, and I caught myself kind of like letting the biases and the stereotypes take over, and I'm like, maybe I would have never talked to that person because of previous experiences or whatever. And I'm like being super honest with myself, like, that's not somebody that looks like a person that I would have like wanted to be friends with. But I've been chatting with them behind like their, CryptoPunk for the last 6 months, and I actually really value them, and they're my friends now. And so it's super, super powerful, the ability to kind of like level the playing field and really let kind of like, if you want to, the pure you come out, and you can build around that. And then the community will determine if they find you valuable or not.
So this is really the start of metaverse avatars, right?
I think so. And my bet is that we're going to like human forms much more than monkeys or anything else.
Yes.
So with Neon DAO, we mostly have deployed in human-looking forms.
But then the problem is then people are going to choose color and attributes,
like
and we
jackets.
go back to exactly the same thing.
Well, I mean,
Meaning, color of skin,
Right.
and obviously there'll be voices in avatars, and we'll be able to choose. Everyone's going to have an English accent and white. There's something nice about.
I could never see myself being like a blonde guy on the metaverse, myself.
No, me neither.
Maybe a little bit more like Jack going to the gym, a couple inches taller. But could I see myself as another type? I don't know. I don't think so. But again, that's just me. But I do go back to looking at, again, art history, right? What have we painted through time? Us and our vision of us. And so I think the metaverse will look a lot more human than what people are expecting. And yeah, there'll be fun things. You'll be going as like a King Kong character to like parties and clubs and stuff. You're not going to show up to like your metaverse office in like, a cat.
I tell you what was fascinating, because then a lot of us are defined by age, and so we get stuck in a certain type of understanding. I was with one of the guys here at the event who works for PlayStation. And he's like, I went into this metaverse game experience, and it's 10-year-olds. And there's a 10-year-old with a human form, a 10-year-old as a Spider-Man, a 10-year-old as a panda bear, and a whole mix of these. And they're all interacting, and it looks ludicrous because you can't take anybody seriously, but they're all doing some educational pursuit, but with this kind of ridiculous character. It's like, that's interesting.
But that's what we do in real life.
That's true.
Walk through the Vegas strips. There's like some sort of cowboy convention right now. People are wearing cowboy hats.
I know.
And
Hilarious.
cowboy boots, right?
It's just
like you have your chucks with like colorful like shoelaces.
That's right. It's an identifier.
That's, we're not wearing around doing Spider-Man masks, but some people are. And so technology in its ability to reduce that friction, make it a lot cheaper for us to express ourselves, right? So if I wanted to walk around in a Spider-Man suit in Vegas, I will have to go and buy a suit that fits me perfectly. Probably gonna be hard to get, probably gonna be expensive.
Yeah.
Probably gonna be hot to wear a suit.
And it might not look flattering either.
Well, thanks. My wife is gonna love that comment. But in the metaverse, it takes 2 clicks, and I can wear my Spider-Man suit, or I can wear, a crazy hat, or the Dolce & Gabbana jacket that you probably wouldn't wear out too much.
No.
But in the metaverse, right, at the little CryptoVoxels Real Vision headquarters, there'll be Raoul with this like awesome jacket. So I guess just an extrapolation of what we're already doing.
I love this. So I think the final thought is that, and you led with this, is that really we're just enabling the standard human traits in the digital world. And we don't need to overthink it, because humans are humans and they've always done the same thing.
Yeah, we're just lowering those barriers, the geographical barriers, even the language barriers, right?
There's going to be clothing brands, multi-billion-dollar clothing brands that are going to come out of this.
Already, look at Artifact. They raised amount of money that's like you would have never believed it, a year ago. and they're selling digital sneakers, and they're selling all these kinds of things, and people put a lot of value into them. And so, yeah, no, it's I feel very, very lucky to have fallen down the rabbit hole and be here right now and have experienced what we've experienced, and super excited for what's coming.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. We don't need to understand it all, but all you can understand is magic is happening.
Yeah, for sure.
My friend, great to see you on Real Vision. And we'll see you soon. We're going to get you back interviewing people as well at some point. And,
looking forward
and you're going to
Thank
talk us
so
through the curated gallery as well, I think. I think you're doing a piece for us on that.
Yes.
Excited.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Great to see you.